The massive ships appeared without warning. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected something unusual at the edge of the solar system. At first, the scientists thought their equipment was malfunctioning. The readings were off the charts. Objects bigger than anything humanity had ever built were moving through space with impossible precision. Admiral James Thompson stood in Earth Defense Command's main control room, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of dozens of screens. At 62, he had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, though he had never truly believed it would come. His gray hair and the lines around his eyes spoke of decades of military service, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Show me the latest images," he ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The main screen flickered to life, displaying enhanced telescope footage from their outer system sensors. What they saw made the room fall silent. Hundreds of ships, each larger than Earth's biggest cities, moved in perfect formation. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them look like moving holes in space. "Sir," called out Technical Officer Mark Wilson, his fingers flying across his keyboard, "we're detecting energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. These ships, they're not using any propulsion system we understand." Thompson nodded grimly. "How many?" "We've counted 347 capital ships so far, sir, and thousands of smaller vessels." Wilson paused, swallowing hard. "They're arranged in attack formations we've only theorized about in our advanced warfare simulations." The Admiral's jaw tightened. He had spent years studying potential first contact scenarios. But this wasn't following any of the peaceful contact protocols they had hoped alien civilizations might use. This was a show of force. "Get me the President," Thompson said, reaching for the secure communication terminal. "And contact every major military command center. Full silence protocols are now in effect." Within hours, Earth's major powers had mobilized their forces while keeping the public unaware. Military satellites were repositioned, nuclear arsenals were put on high alert, and submarines slipped silently into strategic positions across Earth's oceans, all while the alien fleet continued its methodical advance through the solar system. In the White House Situation Room, Thompson presented the latest findings to a group of ashen-faced world leaders who had gathered via secure video conference. "The alien fleet has already passed Jupiter," he explained, pointing to the tactical display. "Their technology is far beyond ours. They're moving faster than we thought possible while maintaining perfect formation. Our best estimates suggest they'll reach Earth orbit in less than 72 hours. "Do we have any idea who they are?" asked the British Prime Minister, her voice tense. A tall woman in a lab coat stepped forward. Dr. Anna Richards, head of xenorchaeology at the United Nations Space Agency. "We believe we do," she said, pulling up a series of ancient cave paintings and archaeological findings on the screen. "For years, we found evidence in ancient civilizations of visitors from the stars. We dismissed them as myths, but they all describe the same thing: a vast empire that ruled the galaxy." She clicked to the next slide, showing intercepted communications they had begun to decode. "We've managed to translate some of their transmissions. They call themselves simply the Empire. Our analysis of their communication patterns suggests they've conquered at least 47 civilizations in the past century alone." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't dealing with friendly visitors or even simple conquerors. They were facing an ancient, vast, and utterly ruthless civilization that had perfected the art of subjugating other species. "There's more," Thompson added, his voice heavy. "Their scan patterns suggest they're analyzing our defenses, population centers, and resource deposits. These aren't explorers. This is an invasion force conducting preliminary reconnaissance." As if to confirm his words, new alerts flashed across the screens. Smaller alien craft had begun entering the upper atmosphere, their stealth technology so advanced that only Earth's most sensitive instruments could detect them. The President of the United States stood up, her face set with determination. Then we need to prepare. Not just our militaries, but our people. We can't keep this secret for long, and when the truth comes out, we need to be ready. Thompson looked out the window at the peaceful city below, knowing that this might be one of the last times he would see Earth this way. The greatest challenge in human history was approaching, and they had barely 3 days to prepare for it. The warning lights continued to flash, and somewhere, above, invisible to the naked eye, the Empire's scouts began their work, completely unaware that they were about to make the greatest mistake in their long and bloody history. The message came exactly 48 hours after the first ships were spotted. Every screen on Earth, from smartphones to billboards, flickered to life simultaneously. Television broadcasts, radio signals, and internet connections were overridden with perfect precision. A figure appeared on every display, tall and humanoid but clearly alien. Its skin had a metallic sheen, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light. People of Earth, the figure spoke in perfect English, its voice simultaneously translated into every human language. I am Imperial Commander Marcus Rex of the Galactic Empire. Your world has been chosen for integration into our civilization. In the UN Emergency Security Council chamber, world leaders watched with clenched fists as the alien continued its speech. Admiral Thompson stood at the back of the room, noting how the Empire hadn't bothered with diplomatic protocols or even basic introductions. This was not a negotiation, it was a proclamation. For 10,000 years, we have brought order to the chaos of the galaxy, Rex continued, his expression showing what could only be described as bored contempt. Your species has been observed and deemed suitable for absorption into our empire. Resistance is not advised. 47 civilizations before you have attempted it. None have succeeded. The alien commander pulled up a holographic display, showing scenes of devastating planetary bombardments. These are the worlds that chose poorly. We are not cruel, merely efficient. You have 72 hours to submit to imperial authority. Your governments will be disbanded. Your military forces will be integrated into our auxiliary forces. Your resources will be properly managed by imperial economists. Admiral Thompson watched as several world leaders visibly paled at the casual way Rex described the end of human independence. But he also noticed something else, something in the way the alien commander carried himself. Your compliance will be rewarded, Rex continued. You will receive access to imperial technology, healthcare, and education. Your standard of living will improve. Your wars will end. You will know the peace that only the Empire can provide. The transmission cut to detailed instructions for Earth's surrender, including protocols for the dismantling of all military forces and the establishment of imperial governance centers in major cities. In the hours that followed, the UN chamber erupted into heated debate. Some nations advocated immediate surrender, citing the overwhelming technological advantage of the Empire. Others called for resistance at any cost. Admiral Thompson stood before the assembly, his voice cutting through the chaos. Before we make any decisions, you need to see this. He nodded to his technical team, and new images appeared on the main screen. Our analysis of their ships has revealed something interesting. Dr. Tom Miller, the head of Earth's Advanced Technology Division, stepped forward. We've been studying their energy signatures, their movement patterns, and their communication methods. The Empire's technology is advanced, yes, but it's stagnant. Every ship uses exactly the same systems, the same weapons, the same tactics. There's no variation, no innovation. He pulled up more detailed scans. Their ships are impressive, but they're using the same designs they probably have been for centuries. They're not advancing anymore. They're just copying what worked before. The Russian president leaned forward. Are you suggesting they can be beaten? No, Thompson replied carefully. Not in a direct confrontation, but their message revealed more than they intended. Did you notice how Commander Rex spoke? The contempt, the assumption of victory. They're not just confident, they're arrogant. and arrogance leads to mistakes. He pressed a button, and new tactical displays appeared. Their ships are arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Their responses are predictable. Their entire civilization seems to run on rigid protocols and procedures. They expect us to either surrender immediately or fight conventionally and lose. A smile crossed his face, not a pleasant one, but the kind that suggested he knew something the enemy didn't. But humanity has never been good at doing what we're expected to do. The Chinese premier spoke up. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we send them a message of our own. Not a surrender, and not a conventional declaration of war. Thompson's eyes gleamed with determination. I'm suggesting we show them something they've never seen in 10,000 years of conquest. A species that isn't afraid of them. As if to punctuate his words, new alerts flashed across the screens. The Empire's ships had begun moving into lower orbit, their massive forms now visible from Earth's surface as dark shapes blocking out the stars. The 72-hour countdown had begun, but humanity was about to prove that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't technology or firepower. It's the ability to do the unexpected. Dr. Lisa Walker hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she couldn't stop now. Not when she was looking at data that could change everything. The massive screens in her underground lab at the Global Defense Research Center displayed thousands of data points comparing human biology with the limited information they had gathered about the Empire's species. As she stared at the results, her hands trembled slightly, not from the excessive coffee, but from the implications of what she was seeing. Admiral Thompson. She spoke into her secure phone, her voice urgent. You need to see this. Now. Within 20 minutes, Thompson arrived with a small group of military and scientific leaders. They found Dr. Walker pacing in front of her displays, her lab coat wrinkled, her gray hair escaping from its usual neat bun. What am I looking at, Doctor? Thompson asked, studying the complex charts and diagrams. Our greatest advantage, she replied, pulling up new screens. We've been so focused on their technological superiority that we missed something fundamental. Look at these biological readings we got from their scout ships. The display showed detailed scans of the Empire's forces. They're adapted to perfect conditions, she explained. Their homeworld, their ships, their colonies, they maintain exactly the same gravity, temperature, and atmosphere everywhere they go. They've engineered their entire civilization to eliminate environmental stress. And that's important because, one of the generals asked. Dr. Walker's eyes lit up. Because humans evolved on Earth, one of the most chaotic and challenging planets in the galaxy. We adapt to extreme temperatures, varying gravity, different atmospheric pressures. We can survive in deserts, Arctic conditions, high mountains, and deep underwater. She paused for effect. We're not less advanced than them. We're more resilient. She pulled up more data. Their soldiers all show identical genetic modifications, perfect uniformity. But it's made them inflexible. They can't handle environmental variations without their technology. Meanwhile, human DNA shows remarkable variation and adaptability. Thompson leaned forward, beginning to understand. You're saying we're naturally tougher than they are. Much tougher, Dr. Walker confirmed. Think about it. We regularly subject ourselves to extreme conditions for fun. We climb mountains, dive into oceans, jump out of aircraft. Our athletes push the limits of physical endurance. We can break bones and heal, lose blood and recover, adapt to injuries, and continue fighting. She switched to another screen showing Empire battle footage they decoded. Their combat doctrine is perfect, precise, and utterly rigid. They fight the same way every time because it's always worked. But they've never faced a species that could survive outside their carefully controlled environments. A military analyst in the room spoke up. Their weapons are designed for clean, efficient kills. They don't account for human endurance or our ability to fight while injured. Exactly, Dr. Walker said. And there's more. Their ships maintain constant internal conditions. They have no concept of fighting in different gravities or atmospheric pressures. But our pilots train for all sorts of conditions, Our soldiers can fight in any terrain. Thompson walked closer to the screens, his mind racing with possibilities. Can we use this? Dr. Walker nodded vigorously. Their rigid tactics assume every species will respond the same way to their attacks, but we can fight in ways they've never seen. Their perfect environmental controls are actually a weakness. Disrupt them, and their forces will be fighting in conditions they've never experienced. She pulled up one final display, a comparison of human and imperial stress responses. Most importantly, we've evolved to become stronger under pressure. When we're threatened, we don't just fight harder. We innovate. We adapt. We change our tactics. The Empire hasn't had to do that in thousands of years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were still technologically outmatched, but they had something the Empire couldn't comprehend: the ability to thrive in chaos. Get this information to our tactical teams, Thompson ordered. And Dr. Walker, I want you working with military command. If we can turn their environmental controls against them, we can create conditions they've never fought in, she finished. Conditions we've been thriving in for our entire history. As the group dispersed to implement this new information, Dr. Walker looked once more at her displays. The Empire had spent millennia perfecting their civilization, eliminating chaos, and enforcing uniformity. They had never faced an enemy that had evolved in precisely the opposite way, embracing chaos, celebrating diversity, and growing stronger through adversity. The countdown timer showed 40 hours remaining until the Empire's deadline. But now, for the first time, humanity had hope, not because they could match the Empire's strength, but because they could introduce something the Empire had forgotten how to handle: unpredictability. With 24 hours remaining until the Empire's deadline, Earth prepared to send its response. The message had been carefully crafted, debated, and refined by military strategists, historians, and psychologists. It would be humanity's only warning to the Empire. Admiral Thompson stood in the Global Broadcast Center, surrounded by communications experts and military leaders. The room hummed with tension as technicians made final adjustments to ensure their message would penetrate the Empire's communications networks. "Are we ready?" Thompson asked, his voice steady. The chief technician nodded. "We've matched their broadcast frequencies. Whatever mental conditioning they use to understand all languages, it'll work in reverse. They'll understand every word." Thompson took a deep breath. Begin transmission. Across the Imperial fleet, every screen and communication device activated simultaneously. The Empire's crews paused in surprise. No species had ever hijacked their communications before. The image that appeared wasn't of world leaders or military commanders. Instead, it showed scenes from human history: ancient battles, modern wars, disaster responses, and achievements against impossible odds. Thompson's voice carried across the void of space, calm and measured. "You believe you know what humanity is. You've seen our cities, counted our weapons, and measured our technology. But you've missed something fundamental about our species." The images shifted to show human achievements: people climbing Mount Everest, diving into ocean trenches, walking on the moon, surviving in extreme conditions. "We're not trapped on a single world like your other conquests. We thrive in chaos. We adapt to every environment. We've spent our entire history fighting each other, our world, and our own limitations." The display changed to show Earth's military history, from ancient armies to modern special forces training in extreme conditions. Every war we've fought has made us stronger. Every disaster has taught us to survive. Every challenge has forced us to innovate. We don't follow a single doctrine of warfare. We have thousands, and we create new ones every time we fight. In his command ship, Imperial Commander Rex watched with growing unease as the human continued. "You've conquered 47 civilizations by offering them two choices: surrender or be destroyed. We're offering you a third option: leave. Because if you force this fight, you need to understand what you're facing." The screen showed scenes of humanity's resilience: cities rebuilt after disasters, Soldiers continuing to fight while wounded, civilians rescuing others at risk to themselves. We've studied your empire, your perfect, unchanging, predictable empire. For 10,000 years, you've faced species that fear chaos, species that surrender when their armies fall or their cities burn. But chaos is where humanity excels. The images shifted to modern military exercises, showing soldiers operating in every environment Earth could offer. Your soldiers train in controlled environments. Ours train in deserts, jungles, Arctic wastelands, and ocean depths. Your ships maintain perfect conditions. Our people survive when life support fails. You fight with precision. We fight with adaptation. Thompson's voice hardened. So this is humanity's only warning to the Galactic Empire. We are not trapped here with you. You are trapped here with us. The transmission continued, relentless. If you begin this war, we will not follow your rules of engagement. We will not fight according to your doctrines. Every battle will be different. Every strategy will change. You'll face an enemy that grows stronger with every defeat, learns from every encounter, and never ever stops adapting. The final images showed humanity's greatest moments of unity and crisis. You believe your superior technology guarantees victory, but you've never faced a species that turns chaos into advantage, that builds strength from adversity, that bleeds, adapts, and keeps fighting. Thompson's final words echoed through every Imperial vessel. You have 24 hours to withdraw from our solar system. After that, you'll learn why humanity's greatest weakness, our unpredictability, is actually our greatest strength. The transmission ended, leaving the Empire's ships in silence. In the broadcast center, Thompson turned to his staff. Prepare all units. If they don't withdraw, we implement Operation Dark Horse immediately. On his command ship, Imperial Commander Rex stood motionless, experiencing something he had never felt in centuries of conquest: doubt. For the first time in the Empire's history, they faced an enemy that didn't fear them, an enemy that had just promised to turn the Empire's greatest strength, its unchanging perfection, into a weakness. The countdown continued, but now both sides waited with very different expectations about what would happen when it reached zero. Commander Robert Stone walked through the underground bunker, 12 hours after Earth's warning message. The massive chamber, carved deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, buzzed with activity as soldiers and scientists worked together with a single purpose. Show me our progress, he ordered, approaching the central command station. The tactical display lit up, showing multiple theaters of operation. Around the world, humanity was preparing in ways the Empire would never expect. They weren't just readying weapons. They were changing the rules of warfare itself. Project Phoenix is ready, sir, reported Major Tom Baker, pointing to different sections of the display. We've converted 23 underground mines into trap zones. The Empire's environmental sensors will read them as weapons facilities, but when their troops enter, Stone nodded, they'll face conditions their perfect environmental suits can't handle. Excellent. What about the ocean initiatives? Deep-sea installations are operational, a naval commander replied. Our submarines have been modified with Dr. Walker's specifications. The Empire's ships can't handle extreme pressure changes. When they follow us into the deep, their hulls will experience stresses they were never designed for. Stone finished. He turned to another screen. Status of the civilian evacuation. Underground cities are ready. An emergency response coordinator reported, but not in the way the Empire will expect. Instead of cowering in bunkers, our people are preparing to support military operations. Every subway system, every mine shaft, every underground facility has been converted into a potential staging area. Stone moved to the next station, where scientists worked on what looked like ordinary military equipment and our primitive weapons. Dr. Walker looked up from her work, her eyes bright with fierce intelligence. Ready. The Empire expects us to use our most advanced technology. They'll be looking for energy weapons, guided missiles, digital systems. Instead, She held up what looked like a simple mechanical rifle. "We're going mechanical. Spring-loaded launchers, chemical reactions, analog systems. Things their sensors aren't even designed to detect because they're too primitive to be considered weapons. Their arrogance will be their weakness," Stone said, allowing himself a small smile. "They'll be looking for technology they can hack or disable. Instead, they'll face weapons that work precisely because they're simple." A young technician approached with a tablet. "Sir, the mountain units report ready. Every peak over 3,000 meters has been prepared. The Empire's troops have never operated at high altitude. Their environmental systems will fail in ways they never imagined." Stone completed. "Good. And the desert teams? In position. The Sahara, Mojave, and Australian outback are set. Extreme heat, sandstorms, and conditions their perfect systems have never encountered." Stone surveyed the global map where thousands of points of light showed humanity's preparation. Not massive military bases or obvious targets, but small adaptable units ready to fight in conditions that would break the Empire's perfect order. "What about the space defense?" he asked, looking at the orbital display. "Our satellites are in position, but not for communication or attack," the Space Command officer reported. "They're ready to create atmospheric disturbances, changes in temperature, pressure, and electromagnetic fields that will play havoc with their environmental controls." Dr. Walker joined Stone at the main display. "The beauty of our plan is its simplicity. The Empire expects us to try to match their technology. Instead, we're going to use Earth itself as a weapon. Every environment that helped shape our species into survivors will become a battlefield they're not prepared for." Stone checked the countdown timer. 11 hours remaining. "And our special forces? Ready in every major terrain," the operations officer reported. "Jungle teams in the Amazon, Arctic units in the poles, mountain troops at high altitude, all trained to fight in conditions that would kill the Empire's soldiers even without weapons. And most importantly," Dr. Walker added, "every unit is autonomous. No central command for them to disable. No standard doctrine for them to predict. Each group will adapt its tactics based on local conditions." Stone looked at the final item on his checklist, and Operation Dark Horse itself. "Ready to launch the moment they make their move," his executive officer confirmed. "They won't even know what hit them." As the countdown continued, humanity prepared not for a conventional war, but for something the Empire had never faced, a species that would turn the very environments that had forged them into weapons. Every harsh condition that had helped humans evolve would become a battlefield where Earth's greatest weakness, the chaos of its environments, would become its greatest strength. The Empire had spent 10,000 years perfecting its methods of conquest. In 11 hours, they would learn that perfection could be a fatal flaw. The deadline passed without Earth's surrender. Imperial Commander Rex stood on his command ship's bridge, his expression cold as he gave the order. "Begin the standard conquest pattern. Target their military installations first." The Empire's fleet moved with perfect precision, their formation unchanged in 10,000 years of victories. Massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their weapons charging with enough power to level cities. But something was wrong. "Commander," one of his officers called out, confusion in his voice. "We're detecting no energy signatures from their military bases, no shield activations, no weapon systems coming online." Rex frowned. "Impossible. Scan again." In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, Commander Stone watched the Imperial ships on his displays. "They took the bait," he said quietly. "Execute Operation Dark Horse." Across Earth, humanity's real defense plan sprang into action. As the Empire's ships fired their first shots at empty military bases, the truth became clear. There were no traditional targets to destroy. The Imperial fleet's first volley hit abandoned facilities filled with outdated equipment. Their perfect sensors, calibrated to detect advanced energy weapons, had completely missed the real threat. "Sir," an Imperial officer shouted, Multiple small-scale attacks across all deployment zones. Enemy forces are using projectile weapons. Rex's eyes widened as reports flooded in. His troops, advancing in perfect formation into what they thought were primitive underground bunkers, suddenly faced conditions their environmental suits couldn't handle. Massive pressure changes, extreme temperatures, mechanical traps that their advanced sensors hadn't even recognized as weapons. Status report, Rex demanded. Ground forces in the desert regions report total environmental system failures. Mountain insertion teams are experiencing catastrophic suit malfunctions. Underground units are. We've lost contact with underground units. In the Sahara, Imperial troops discovered their perfect environmental controls couldn't cope with sandstorms, and heat their sensors hadn't been programmed to consider dangerous. In the mountains, their systems failed as they faced altitude changes they'd never encountered in 10,000 years of controlled combat. Impossible, Rex muttered. They're using the environment itself as a weapon. Human forces emerged from hidden positions, using weapons so mechanically simple that they bypassed all of the Empire's advanced defenses. Spring-powered launchers, chemically propelled projectiles, analog targeting systems that couldn't be hacked or disabled. Sir, our ships in the Pacific Ocean report. They're being attacked from underwater. An officer reported incredulously. Human submarines are operating at depths our sensors said were impossible for their technology level. Stone watched from his command center as reports came in. The Empire's perfect formations were breaking apart as they faced attacks from enemies they couldn't predict or track. Each human unit fought differently, adapted constantly, and used the terrain in ways the Empire had never seen. Northern units report successful engagement, his tactical officer announced. The Empire's troops can't operate in Arctic conditions. Their systems are failing faster than their weapons can fire. In space, the Empire's mighty ships found themselves battling something they'd never encountered. An atmosphere they couldn't control. Human satellites created electromagnetic disturbances and pressure changes that played havoc with their perfect environmental systems. Commander Rex, an officer called out real fear in his voice for the first time in centuries. We're losing ground forces at an unprecedented rate. Their attacks. They're all different. We can't predict their patterns. Every unit fights differently. Rex stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His perfect invasion force was being taken apart by weapons they considered primitive, in environments they weren't prepared for, by enemies who refused to follow any predictable pattern of warfare. Fall back to high orbit, he ordered. Regroup and prepare for orbital bombardment. But as his ships tried to retreat, they discovered another surprise. The humans had seeded the upper atmosphere with particulates that their engines had never been designed to handle. Ships that had operated flawlessly for centuries began experiencing cascading system failures. In the Rocky Mountain bunker, Stone allowed himself a grim smile. Send word to all units. Continue with your local battle plans. Fight in your own way, in your own terrain. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had expected Earth to be like every other world they'd conquered, to either surrender to superior technology or fight a conventional war and lose. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that turned their greatest strength, their perfect, unchanging methods, into their greatest weakness. The battle for Earth had begun, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire was learning what it meant to fear. 3 days after the first battle, Imperial Commander Rex faced something no Empire commander had experienced in 10,000 years. Defeat. His mighty fleet hung in high orbit, reduced to less than half its original size. The perfect formations were gone, replaced by scattered groups of damaged ships struggling to maintain basic functions. Their flawless environmental systems, corrupted by Earth's atmospheric defenses, could no longer protect them from the chaos of space. Final casualty report, his executive officer announced, voice trembling. We've lost 60% of our ground forces. 40% of our fleet is beyond repair. The remaining ships report critical system failures. Rex stared at the blue planet below. trying to understand how it had all gone so wrong. "How?" he whispered. "They're primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours." The answer came in the form of a transmission from Earth. Admiral Thompson's face appeared on the command ship's main screen, his expression calm but firm. "Commander Rex," Thompson said, "you're probably wondering how a primitive species defeated your perfect army. The answer is simple. We never tried to match your perfection. We embraced our chaos." Across the galaxy, other civilizations under Imperial rule were receiving transmissions of the battle. They watched in amazement as Earth's forces, using simple but ingenious tactics, had systematically dismantled the Empire's supposedly invincible military. "Your Empire's greatest strength was its consistency," Thompson continued, "but that made you predictable. While you spent 10,000 years perfecting one way of fighting, we developed thousands. While you made your soldiers identical, we celebrated our differences. While you eliminated chaos, we learned to use it." In the Imperial Palace on the Empire's homeworld, the ruling council watched in stunned silence as reports of their defeat spread through their perfect society. For the first time, questions began to arise about the wisdom of enforcing absolute uniformity. "But this doesn't have to end in your destruction," Thompson said. "We're offering you a choice, the same choice you never gave others. Learn to adapt or fade into history." Rex looked at his tactical display, showing dozens of human ships approaching using completely different flight patterns. Some were advanced spacecraft, others were primitive rockets, each operating in ways his systems couldn't predict. "The galaxy is changing," Thompson declared. "Earth is sending this message to every world under your control. Chaos isn't your enemy. Adaptation isn't a weakness. The species that survive aren't the ones that achieve perfection. They're the ones that never stop evolving." In underground cities and mountain fortresses across Earth, humans emerged to see the Empire's mighty ships retreating. Not in the perfect formation they arrived in, but in a scattered withdrawal that showed just how thoroughly their rigid systems had been broken. Dr. Walker stood beside Admiral Thompson in the command center, watching the Empire's forces flee. "They'll be back," she said, "but different." Thompson nodded. "They'll have to be. We've shown the galaxy that their perfect system isn't invincible. Change is coming to the Empire, whether they want it or not." Across the conquered worlds, populations that had lived under the Empire's rigid control for generations began to stir. They had seen how Earth's diversity and adaptability had defeated the undefeatable. The age of enforced perfection was ending. "Send word to all Earth forces," Thompson ordered, "and then transmit to every world in the Empire's territory. Tell them that humanity stands ready to help any civilization that wants to remember how to adapt and grow." The Empire's retreat marked more than just humanity's survival. It marked the beginning of a new age in the galaxy. Earth, the chaotic world that had forged humanity in adversity, became a beacon for species remembering how to embrace change. In the following months, representatives from dozens of worlds arrived on Earth, not to submit to a new power, but to learn. They came to rediscover something the Empire had spent millennia trying to eliminate: the strength that comes from diversity, the wisdom of adaptation, and the power of controlled chaos. The Empire's defeat became known across the galaxy as the moment when perfection fell to persistence, when uniformity yielded to diversity, and when a species that had been dismissed as primitive proved that the ability to adapt was the greatest power of all. Humanity had not just survived, they had shown the galaxy a new way forward. The age of rigid perfection was over. The era of endless adaptation had begun.